The Habit Code. Break old patterns, build better habits, and take control of your life. Published by MindRise Audio. Introduction. The code you live by. Your life may be changing right now, not because of one major decision, not because of one dramatic moment, but because of what you do repeatedly. Think about your average day. You wake up, you reach for your phone, you follow familiar routines. You make the same small choices, you respond to the same triggers, you spend your time in ways that may feel insignificant, then the day ends, and tomorrow much of it happens again. This is the strange power of habits. They are often too small to notice, yet powerful enough to shape an entire life. A single choice rarely changes everything, but a choice repeated hundreds of times can. The problem is that most people never consciously decide which habits will shape their future. They simply inherit them. From childhood, from their environment, from the people around them, from stress, from convenience, from years of repetition. Some habits move them forward, others quietly hold them back, and because these behaviors become familiar, they can feel almost impossible to change. You may know exactly what you should do. You may know that you should exercise more, read more, focus better, spend less time scrolling, start the project, wake up earlier, eat better, work consistently. Knowing is not usually the problem. The real problem is doing it repeatedly. That is where habits become important. A habit is more than something you do often. It is a behavior that gradually becomes part of the way you live. Over time, it can influence your choices before you even realize you are making them. And this leads to one of the most important ideas in this book. Your future is being built by your repeated behavior, not someday, today. Every ordinary day gives you hundreds of opportunities to reinforce the person you are becoming. The good news is that this works in both directions. If your habits have taken you somewhere you do not want to be, they can be changed. You are not permanently trapped by your current routines. You do not need to transform your entire life overnight. You need to understand the code. That is what this book is about. The Habit Code is not a collection of empty promises or complicated productivity tricks. It is a practical exploration of how habits are created, strengthened, interrupted, and rebuilt. You will learn why certain behaviors become automatic. You will discover why motivation disappears. You will understand why making a habit smaller can make it stronger. You will see how your environment can either support your goals or quietly sabotage them. You will explore the connection between your habits and your identity, and you will learn what to do when you fail. Because you will fail sometimes. Everyone does. The difference is what happens next. A missed day can become a missed week. A missed week can become a belief that you are incapable of change. But one mistake does not have to become a pattern. You can learn to return. You can learn to continue. You can learn to build systems that support you even when you do not feel motivated. Most importantly, you will begin to see your daily actions differently. The small decision to read instead of scroll. The choice to begin instead of postpone. The decision to prepare tonight instead of struggle tomorrow. The 5 minutes you give to something that matters. None of these actions seem powerful on their own, but repetition changes the equation. A small action repeated long enough becomes a pattern. A pattern repeated long enough becomes part of your lifestyle. And your lifestyle eventually becomes the experience of your life. That is why this subject matters. You are not simply building habits, you are building the person who will live your future. So as you listen, do not try to change everything at once. Instead, pay attention. Look at your routines, notice what you repeat, notice what triggers your behavior, notice what makes good choices easier, notice what makes bad choices almost automatic. You may discover that some of the things you have been calling a lack of discipline are actually problems with your environment, your systems, or the size of the changes you are attempting to make. And that realization can change everything. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to become intentional, to stop living entirely on autopilot, to understand the patterns that shape your days, and then to start writing better ones. Because your life does not suddenly become different when you make one great decision. It becomes different when you make better decisions often enough for them to become part of who you are. This is the habit code, and by the end of this journey, you will not simply know more about habits. You will understand how to use them to build a life you are proud to repeat. Chapter 1. The invisible force behind your life. What if the most important decisions of your life are being made before you even think about them? Consider a normal morning. Your alarm rings, you reach for your phone, you check a few messages, you scroll for a while. You get ready in the usual way. You eat what is convenient. You leave home and begin another familiar day. None of these choices feels important. That is exactly why they matter. Your life is not shaped only by the decisions you make during major moments. It is shaped by the small behaviors you repeat when nothing seems to be at stake. This is the invisible force of habit. A habit does not usually announce itself. It does not ask for permission. It simply becomes familiar. After enough repetition, the brain begins to treat the behavior as a normal part of life. Think about driving a familiar route. The first few times, you may have paid close attention to every turn. Months later, you can arrive at your destination and barely remember the journey. Your mind learned the route. Habits work in much the same way. They reduce the amount of thinking required to act. That can be incredibly useful. Imagine having to consciously decide how to brush your teeth, where to put your keys, or how to make your morning coffee every single day. Life would become exhausting. Habits save mental energy, but the same system that makes useful behaviors easy can also make harmful behaviors automatic. That is where the real problem begins. A person may tell themselves that they lack discipline, but perhaps they have simply repeated a pattern so many times that the pattern now feels natural. Someone sits down to work and immediately opens social media. Someone feels stressed and reaches for food. Someone becomes uncomfortable with a difficult task and starts checking messages. Someone promises to exercise tomorrow, then follows the same routine the next morning. None of these moments looks life-changing, but repeated thousands of times, they can change the direction of a life. This gives us a different way to think about personal change. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" ask, "What have I been practicing?" That question is more useful because behavior is often learned through repetition. If you repeatedly avoid difficult conversations, avoidance becomes easier. If you repeatedly delay important work, delay becomes familiar. If you repeatedly keep promises to yourself, keeping promises becomes familiar too. You are always practicing something. The question is whether you are practicing what you want to become. Consider two people with the same goal. Both want to become healthier. One waits for the perfect moment. They make a large plan, become excited, follow it for several days, miss a workout, and eventually stop. The other person makes a smaller change. They walk after dinner. They do it when they are busy. They do it when the weather is not perfect. They do it without making a big announcement. After 1 week, the difference is small. After 1 year, it may be enormous. The difference was not one person having a stronger personality. It was repetition. This is why habits are more powerful than occasional bursts of effort. A burst of effort can produce a result. A habit can produce a direction, and direction matters because small actions accumulate. There is another side to this idea that is easy to miss. Your habits do not only shape what you do, they also shape what you believe about yourself. Imagine someone who keeps saying, "I am terrible at following through." Each time they quit, that belief becomes easier to accept. Now imagine the same person begins keeping one small promise each day. They read for 10 minutes. They finish one task before checking their phone. They prepare for tomorrow before going to bed. The actions are small, but something deeper is happening. They are collecting evidence. They are showing themselves, through behavior, that they can be consistent. This is why lasting change is not simply about forcing yourself to behave differently. It is about creating repeated evidence of a different way of living. Your actions teach your mind what to expect from you. So take a quiet look at your own day. What do you do without thinking? What do you reach for when you are bored? What do you do when you are stressed? What happens when a task becomes difficult? What do you repeatedly postpone? And perhaps most importantly, what do you repeatedly do that makes your future easier? These questions are not meant to make you feel guilty. They are meant to make the invisible visible. You cannot change a pattern you never notice. Awareness is the beginning because it gives you a choice. The next time you catch yourself repeating an automatic behavior, pause for a moment. Do not judge it, simply notice it. Ask yourself what happened just before the behavior. Notice what you were feeling. Notice what you were trying to escape, gain, or make easier. You may discover that the behavior is solving a problem, even if it creates a bigger one later. That discovery is valuable. For example, scrolling your phone may not really be about entertainment. It may be a quick escape from mental pressure. Procrastination may not always be laziness. It may be an attempt to avoid uncertainty or discomfort. Understanding the function of a behavior gives you a better place to begin. You stop fighting yourself blindly. You start studying the pattern. And once you can see the pattern, you can begin to change the choices surrounding it. That is the first lesson of the habit code. Your habits are not random details scattered across your day. They are repeated instructions. Every time you repeat a behavior, you make that behavior a little more familiar. Over time, familiar actions become easier to repeat, and repeated actions begin to influence the person you become. So do not underestimate the ordinary. The 5 minutes, the small decision, the quiet routine nobody notices. These are the places where your future is being built. You do not need to change your entire life today. You need to become more aware of what you are rehearsing every day. Because before you can rewrite a habit, you must first recognize the code that is already running. And once you can see it, you are no longer powerless against it. You have something much more valuable. You have a choice. Chapter 2. The Habit Loop. Every habit begins with a moment that most people never notice. Something happens. You feel something. Then you act. A few minutes later, the action is over and life moves on. But if the same pattern happens again and again, your brain begins to connect those moments. Eventually, the behavior can feel almost automatic. This is the habit loop. Understanding this loop gives you something powerful. It allows you to stop seeing habits as mysterious weaknesses and start seeing them as patterns that can be understood and changed. Imagine someone who comes home after a stressful day. They put down their bag, sit on the sofa, and reach for their phone. They open a familiar app and begin scrolling. 10 minutes become 30. For a moment, the pressure of the day feels distant. What happened? The stress was the starting point. The phone became the response. The temporary relief became the reward. If this happens often enough, the brain begins to connect stress with scrolling. The next time stress appears, the urge to reach for the phone arrives faster. The person may think, "I just have no self-control." But that is not the whole story. There is a pattern underneath the behavior. The pattern has 3 basic parts. A cue starts the process. A routine is the behavior that follows. A reward tells the brain that the behavior was useful. The cue could be almost anything: a time of day, a place, a person, an emotion, a notification, even a thought. The routine is what you actually do. The reward is what you receive from doing it. Sometimes the reward is pleasure, sometimes it is relief, sometimes it is comfort, stimulation, connection, or a sense of completion. This explains why some habits are surprisingly difficult to break. You are not simply fighting an action, you are responding to a system that has learned to expect a reward. Consider a simple example. You sit down at your desk to begin an important project. The work feels difficult. You do not know exactly where to start. That discomfort becomes the cue. You check your email, then you look at a message, then you watch a short video. For a few minutes, the difficult feeling disappears. Your brain receives relief. The project is still waiting, but you feel better for the moment. If this pattern repeats, your brain learns something important. When difficult work creates discomfort, escape is available. That lesson can become stronger than your original intention. This is why telling yourself to just be disciplined often does not solve the problem. You need to understand what happens immediately before the behavior and what you receive immediately after it. That is where change begins. Think about one habit you want to change. Do not begin by asking how to stop it. Begin by asking what triggers it. When does it usually happen? Where are you? Who is around you? What are you feeling? What were you doing just before it started? Then ask what the behavior gives you. Does it provide relief? Does it remove boredom? Does it make you feel rewarded? Does it help you avoid something uncomfortable? Does it give you a feeling of control? These questions can reveal more than self-criticism ever will. There is also an important lesson here for building good habits. You can use the same loop in your favor. Suppose you want to read more. Leaving a book hidden inside a drawer creates friction. You have to remember it, find it, open it, and decide when to read. Instead, place the book beside your bed. Now the environment creates a clear cue. After you finish your evening routine, the book is already there. You read a few pages. Then you close the book and enjoy the feeling of having done something meaningful before sleep. The behavior becomes easier to repeat because the beginning is obvious and the reward is immediate. This principle applies to almost anything. If you want to exercise, prepare your clothes before you go to bed. If you want to drink more water, keep a bottle where you can see it. If you want to practice a skill, place the tools for that skill within easy reach. Do not rely entirely on memory. Give your brain a clear signal. The environment can become part of the habit loop. There is another reason this matters. People often try to remove a bad habit without replacing what the habit was providing. That creates a problem. If scrolling helps you escape stress, simply removing the phone may leave the stress untouched. If snacking provides comfort, removing the food does not automatically create another source of comfort. If checking messages provides connection, turning off notifications may create an uncomfortable silence. The behavior may return because the underlying need is still there. A better approach is to understand the reward and look for a healthier response. If you need relief, take a short walk. If you need stimulation, play music or move your body. If you need connection, talk to someone. If you need a break, take a real break instead of disguising avoidance as entertainment. The goal is not to make life harder. The goal is to find better ways to meet the same underlying need. Now consider how quickly a habit loop can become invisible. You may not consciously decide to check your phone every time you feel bored. You simply notice the phone in your hand. You may not decide to procrastinate whenever a task feels difficult. You simply find yourself doing something else. The loop has become automatic. That is why awareness is so important. The moment between the cue and the routine is where your power begins to return. At first, that moment may last only a second, but even a second is enough to notice. I am feeling uncomfortable. I want to escape. I am reaching for my phone. That small pause creates space, and space creates choice. You do not have to make the perfect decision every time. You simply need to become better at noticing the moment when the old pattern begins. This is the real value of understanding the habit loop. You stop treating your behavior as a fixed part of your personality. You start seeing it as a learned sequence, and learned sequences can be redesigned. So pay attention to the loops running through your day. Some are helping you, some are hurting you. Many are doing both in ways you have never examined. Your task is not to become suspicious of every action. It is to become curious. When a behavior keeps repeating, ask what starts it. Ask what keeps it alive. Ask what reward makes your brain want to repeat it. The answers will show you where the pattern begins, and once you know where a habit begins, you can begin changing where it leads. That is the power of the habit loop. It turns an invisible pattern into something you can see, and what you can see, you can begin to change. Chapter 3. Start smaller than you think. Most people do not fail because they want too little. They fail because they try to change too much at once. A new goal arrives with excitement. You decide that this is the time things will be different. You will exercise every morning. Read 30 pages a day. Wake up at 5. Eat perfectly. Work without distractions. Learn a new skill. For a few days, everything feels possible. Then real life returns. You sleep badly. Work becomes stressful. Your schedule changes. You miss one workout. You skip one reading session. And suddenly, the entire plan feels broken. The problem may not have been your commitment. The problem may have been the size of the starting point. A habit has to survive ordinary life. That means the first version of a new habit should often be much smaller than your ambition. Think about someone who wants to become a regular reader. They buy several books and decide to read 30 pages every night. It sounds reasonable, but after a long day, 30 pages can feel like work. They miss one night, then another. Soon the books are sitting untouched. Now imagine a different approach. They decide to read 2 pages every night. 2 pages sounds almost too easy. That is the point. There is very little resistance. On a busy night, 2 pages are still possible. On a good night, 2 pages may become 10. The goal at the beginning is not to prove how much you can do. The goal is to prove that you can show up. This distinction changes everything. When you make a habit small enough to begin easily, you reduce the argument happening inside your mind. You do not need a long speech to convince yourself. You do not need to wait for motivation. You simply begin. 5 push-ups, 1 page, 10 minutes of focused work, 1 glass of water, 2 minutes of practice, a short walk around the block. These actions may look insignificant when compared with your final goal. But a habit is not built by the size of one performance. It is built by repetition. Imagine trying to push a heavy door. If you throw all your strength against it once, then walk away, the door remains closed. But if you apply steady pressure again and again, eventually something changes. Small habits work through the same principle. They create movement. And once movement begins, continuing becomes easier. This is especially important because starting is often harder than continuing. Think about running. The hardest moment for many people is not the 10th minute. It is the moment when they have to put on their shoes and leave the house. Once they are outside, the decision has already been made. The same thing happens with writing, studying, cleaning, exercising, and creative work. The mind creates resistance before the action begins. It asks questions. Do I have enough time? Do I feel ready? What if I do it badly? Maybe I should start tomorrow. The smaller the first step, the less power those questions have. This does not mean you should always stay small. Small is a starting strategy. Once the behavior becomes familiar, you can gradually expand it. First, make the action easy to begin, then make it consistent, then make it stronger. That order matters. Many people reverse it. They demand strong performance before they have built consistency. It is like expecting a new employee to perform perfectly before they understand the job. Give the behavior time to become familiar. There is also a deeper psychological reason small habits work. Every time you complete a behavior, you create evidence about yourself. If you say you will study for an hour and repeatedly fail, you may begin to distrust your own promises. But if you promise yourself 5 minutes and keep that promise every day, something different happens. You begin to believe yourself again. That belief matters. Self-trust is not created by thinking positively about yourself. It is created by keeping small commitments repeatedly. You tell yourself you will walk for 5 minutes, then you do it. You tell yourself you will write one paragraph, then you do it. You tell yourself you will put the phone away while working, then you do it. Each action becomes a small vote for the person you want to become. This is why you should be careful about making dramatic promises to yourself. Extreme plans can feel powerful in the moment, but every promise you break has a cost. A smaller promise that you keep can be far more valuable than a larger promise that you abandon. So take one habit you have been struggling with, shrink it. If you want to exercise for an hour, begin with 10 minutes. If you want to read 30 pages, begin with 2. If you want to write a book, begin with 1 paragraph. If you want to meditate for 20 minutes, begin with 2. If you want to learn a language, begin with 5 minutes. Then remove one more obstacle. Prepare what you need before the habit begins. Choose a specific time. Choose a simple place. Make the first action obvious. The fewer decisions required, the easier it becomes to start. And remember one important rule: do not confuse easy with meaningless. A small action can carry a large purpose. 2 pages can rebuild your relationship with reading. 10 minutes can restart your relationship with exercise. 1 paragraph can restart your relationship with writing. A 5-minute session can remind you that progress is still possible. The value is not only in what you accomplish today, it is in what today's action makes easier tomorrow. This is how momentum is created. One action leads to another. One successful repetition makes the next repetition feel more normal. Eventually, the behavior stops feeling like something you are trying to become. It becomes something you simply do. That is the moment a small habit begins to grow. But there is a warning. Do not turn small habits into another excuse for perfection. You do not need to perform the habit beautifully. You need to perform it consistently. Some days will be strong. Some days will be weak. On difficult days, doing the smallest acceptable version may be enough. The purpose is to keep the connection alive, because when a behavior remains alive, it can grow. When it disappears completely, starting again becomes harder, so lower the starting line. Make the first step almost impossible to refuse. Do not ask yourself to become a completely different person tomorrow. Ask yourself to do one small thing today that your future self will be glad you repeated. Big changes rarely begin with big actions. They begin when a person finally decides that small is not beneath them. Small is where consistency begins. Small is where self-trust grows. Small is where momentum starts. And sometimes the smallest step you are willing to take is the step that finally moves your life forward. Chapter 4. Design your environment. Imagine trying to eat healthier while your kitchen is filled with your favorite snacks. You wake up with good intentions. You tell yourself that today will be different. Then you open the cabinet. The snack is right there. You did not plan to eat it. You were not even thinking about it. But now the choice is directly in front of you. Compare that with a different kitchen. The snacks are out of sight. Fresh fruit is sitting on the counter. Water is already cold in the refrigerator. The food you want to eat is easier to reach. Nothing about your personality has changed. The environment has changed, yet your behavior is likely to change with it. This reveals an important truth about habits. Your surroundings are constantly giving you instructions. Some instructions are obvious. A phone notification tells you to look at your screen. A television in front of you invites you to sit down. A pair of running shoes beside the door reminds you to exercise. A clean desk suggests that it is time to work. Other signals are more subtle. A certain chair may make you want to relax. A particular room may make you feel ready to sleep. Walking into the kitchen may make you think about food. Opening your laptop may trigger the urge to check messages before starting work. Your environment is not passive, it is part of your behavior. This matters because many people try to build better habits while leaving the environment that supports their old habits completely unchanged. They depend on willpower. They tell themselves they should be stronger. They try to resist the same temptation in the same place at the same time every day. That approach can work for a while, but it is exhausting. A better strategy is to change the conditions around the behavior. Make good choices easier. Make unwanted choices less convenient. You do not have to fight every temptation if you can remove some of the battles before they begin. Think about your phone. If it sits beside you while you work, you do not need to receive a notification to become distracted. Its presence alone can create a pull. Now place it in another room. You have not become more disciplined. You have simply created distance between yourself and the distraction. That distance matters. The extra effort required to get the phone can give you enough time to reconsider the impulse. This idea can be applied almost anywhere. If you want to practice guitar, keep the guitar visible and ready. If you want to draw, leave your tools prepared. If you want to study, keep your desk clear and your materials nearby. If you want to drink more water, keep a bottle within reach. If you want to spend less time online, remove unnecessary apps from the easiest places to access them. The goal is simple. Reduce friction for the behavior you want. Increase friction for the behavior you do not want. Friction is the amount of effort between you and an action. Even a small amount can make a difference. Imagine two choices. One requires you to walk across the room, open a drawer, find something, and prepare it. The other is already sitting on your desk. When you are tired, the easier option often wins. This is not a character flaw. It is normal human behavior, so use that reality instead of fighting it. Design your surroundings for the person you are trying to become. There is another powerful part of environmental design. Your environment includes people. The people around you influence what feels normal. If everyone around you complains, constant complaining may begin to feel ordinary. If everyone spends their evenings scrolling, excessive screen time may seem harmless. If the people around you read, exercise, learn, build, and keep commitments, those behaviors become easier to imagine for yourself. This does not mean you need to abandon everyone who behaves differently from you. It means you should understand the influence of your social environment. Ask yourself a simple question. What behaviors become easier for me when I am around certain people? The answer may reveal more than you expect. Your digital environment matters too. Your phone is not just a tool. It can become an environment that travels with you. Every application competes for your attention. Every notification can interrupt your thinking. Every recommendation can pull you toward another piece of content. If you want more control over your attention, you need to design the digital space around you. Turn off notifications that do not matter. Move distracting apps away from the home screen. Create periods when your phone is not part of the room. Choose what you want to see instead of allowing an algorithm to choose everything for you. This is not about rejecting technology. It is about deciding who controls your attention. There is also a lesson here for your physical space. Your surroundings can carry memory. A messy desk can remind you of unfinished work. A prepared workspace can signal that it is time to begin. A bedroom filled with screens and work materials can make it harder to mentally separate work from rest. You can use these signals intentionally. Give different spaces different purposes when possible. Let your desk become a place for focused work. Let your bed become a place for sleep. Let a particular chair become a place for reading. The more consistently you connect a place with a behavior, the stronger that connection can become. You are teaching your brain what happens here. This is why changing your environment can sometimes produce a surprisingly fast improvement. You are not trying to change your personality first. You are changing the signals that surround your behavior. But do not try to redesign your entire life in one afternoon. Start with one habit. Choose the behavior you want to make easier. Then look at the environment around it. What makes this habit difficult? What could be placed closer? What could be prepared earlier? What distraction could be moved farther away? What person, place, or digital signal keeps pulling you toward the old pattern? Then make one environmental change. If you want to write each morning, prepare your desk the night before. If you want to exercise after work, keep your clothes ready. If you want to read before bed, put the book where your phone normally sits. If you want to stop checking your phone while working, give the phone a home outside your workspace. Small changes in your surroundings can remove large amounts of unnecessary resistance, and there is a deeper lesson beneath all of this. You do not need to prove that you can resist everything. You need to create a life that asks you to resist less often. That is a very different approach. Instead of constantly asking, "How strong is my willpower?" ask, "What can I change around me?" Instead of fighting your environment, work with it. Your surroundings should not constantly remind you of the person you used to be. They should quietly support the person you are becoming. Because every day, your environment is shaping your choices. You can leave that process to chance, or you can take control of it. Design the room, design the screen, design the signals, design the path of least resistance. When the environment supports the habit, doing the right thing becomes less of a daily battle. And when the right behavior becomes easier to repeat, consistency has a place to grow. Your surroundings are already influencing your life. The real question is whether you are designing them on purpose. Chapter 5. Become the person who does it. There is a question hidden inside every habit. It is not only, "What am I doing?" It is also, "What does this say about me?" Imagine two people who both want to become writers. The first person says, "I want to write a book someday." The second says, "I am a writer, so I write." The difference may sound small, but it can change how each person behaves when life becomes difficult. The first person is trying to reach a goal. The second person is protecting an identity. This is one of the deepest forces behind lasting habits. Your repeated actions do not simply produce results. They gradually shape the way you see yourself. And once a behavior becomes connected to your identity, it becomes easier to maintain. Think about someone who has exercised for years. If they miss one workout, they may feel disappointed. But they usually do not think, "I am no longer a person who exercises." The habit is connected to how they see themselves. Now consider someone who has never exercised consistently. Missing a workout may not feel like a temporary interruption. It may confirm an old belief. "I knew I could never stick with this." The same event can produce two completely different reactions because the people involved have different identities. This is why goals alone are sometimes not enough. A goal tells you where you want to go. An identity influences how you behave along the way. Suppose you want to save money. You can set a target and track every payment. That can help. But you can also begin seeing yourself as someone who manages money carefully. That identity changes small decisions. You pause before buying something unnecessary. You plan before spending. You become interested in where your money goes. The goal still matters. But now the behavior has meaning beyond the goal. You are not simply trying to save a certain amount. You are practicing being a responsible person with money. The same principle works with learning. Instead of saying, "I am trying to learn another language," you can begin thinking, "I am someone who practices a language every day." Instead of, "I am trying to become organized," think, "I am someone who puts things back where they belong." Instead of, "I am trying to write," think, "I am someone who writes regularly." The wording matters because identity changes the question in your mind. You stop asking whether you feel like doing something. You start asking what a person like you would do next. That question can be surprisingly powerful. Imagine you are tired after work. You plan to read for 10 minutes. Your old identity says, "I am too tired. I will do it tomorrow." Your new identity asks, "What would someone who values learning do tonight?" Maybe the answer is only 2 pages. That is enough. The purpose is not to perform perfectly. It is to act in a way that supports the identity you are building. Every repetition becomes evidence. One workout says, "I take care of my body." One focused work session says, I can keep my attention on what matters. One honest conversation says, I face difficult things. One saved amount of money says, I can control my spending. One page written says, I am capable of creating. These moments may feel too small to matter, but identity is built through evidence. You do not convince yourself that you are reliable by repeating the word reliable. You become more reliable by keeping promises. You do not become confident by waiting until you feel confident. You become more confident by doing things that prove you can handle discomfort. This is where many people make a mistake. They wait for the identity before taking the action. They think they need to feel like a disciplined person before they can behave with discipline, but the process usually works in the opposite direction. Action comes first. Evidence follows. Identity grows from the evidence. Then the stronger identity makes the next action easier. This creates a powerful cycle. You act. You collect evidence. Your self-image changes. The new self-image influences your next action. Then the cycle repeats. But there is an important warning. Do not build your identity around perfection. If you tell yourself, I am a person who never misses a workout, one missed day can become an identity crisis. A stronger identity is flexible. I am a person who returns. That identity can survive difficult weeks. You may miss a workout. You may eat poorly. You may waste an afternoon. You may stop reading for several days. None of these events has to decide who you are. What matters is what you do next. A person who returns after a setback is still practicing consistency. In fact, the ability to return may be more important than the ability to perform perfectly. This changes how you should think about failure. Instead of asking, did I succeed or fail? Ask, what identity did my response strengthen? If you make a mistake and immediately give up, you strengthen the identity of someone who quits. If you make a mistake and begin again, you strengthen the identity of someone who returns. The event may be the same. The lesson is different. This idea can also help you choose which habits deserve your attention. Do not only ask whether a habit produces a useful result. Ask what kind of person the habit trains you to become. A few minutes of reading may not transform your knowledge today, but it trains you to be someone who learns. A short walk may not transform your health today, but it trains you to be someone who moves. Cleaning your workspace for 5 minutes may not transform your entire life, but it trains you to be someone who creates order. The action is small. The identity behind it can be much larger. So choose one identity you want to strengthen. Do not make it vague. Choose something clear. Someone who keeps promises. Someone who finishes what matters. Someone who learns every day. Someone who protects their attention. Someone who takes care of their body. Then ask one simple question each day. What is one small action that would be consistent with this person? Do that action. Then do it again tomorrow. You are not trying to pretend to be someone you are not. You are giving yourself repeated evidence of who you can become. Over time, the words begin to feel less like an aspiration and more like a description. You stop saying, I am trying to become this kind of person. You begin saying, this is what I do. That is a powerful shift, because lasting change does not happen only when your behavior improves. It happens when the behavior becomes part of your understanding of yourself. Your habits are votes. Every day you cast them, not with speeches, not with promises, with actions. And over time, those votes begin to reveal the person you are becoming. So choose carefully. Do not only build habits for the life you want to have, build habits for the person you want to be. Because when the person changes, the behavior has somewhere to belong. And when the behavior belongs to you, consistency stops feeling like something you must force. It starts feeling like something you naturally do. Chapter 6. Win the ordinary days. Most of your life will not happen on your best days. It will happen on ordinary days. Days when you wake up tired. Days when work takes longer than expected. Days when your plans change. days when nobody notices what you accomplish. These days rarely feel important, but they are where consistency is built. Anyone can feel committed when everything is going well. The real test comes when the excitement disappears and the habit becomes ordinary. Imagine someone who decides to write every morning. On the first day, they wake up early, their desk is clean, their mind feels clear. They write for an hour and feel proud. The next morning is different. They slept badly. Their phone is full of messages. They have a busy day ahead. They do not write for an hour. They sit down and write for 10 minutes. That 10-minute session may look insignificant compared with the first day, but it may be more valuable. The first day proved that they could start. The second day proved that they could continue when starting was no longer exciting. That is the difference between motivation and consistency. Motivation loves the beginning. Consistency survives the middle, and the middle is where most meaningful change happens. The danger of ordinary days is that they feel harmless. One missed workout does not seem important. One distracted afternoon does not seem important. One night of poor choices does not seem important. Usually, it is not. The problem is not the single event. The problem is when the exception becomes the new routine. You tell yourself that today is unusual, then tomorrow becomes unusual too. Soon, the habit is no longer part of your life. This is why you need a way to protect your habits when conditions are not ideal. One of the simplest ways is to create a minimum standard. A minimum standard is the smallest version of a habit that still counts. It is not your ideal performance. It is your flaw. Maybe your normal workout is 30 minutes. On a difficult day, your minimum is 5 minutes. Maybe you normally read 20 pages. Your minimum is 2 pages. Maybe you usually work on a project for an hour. Your minimum is 10 focused minutes. The minimum standard gives you an important option. You can reduce the size of the habit without abandoning it. That distinction matters. There will be days when doing less is wise. There will also be days when doing nothing becomes an excuse. A minimum standard helps you tell the difference. It keeps the connection alive. There is another skill that ordinary days require. You must learn to stop negotiating with yourself. The longer you debate whether to do something, the more opportunities your mind has to produce reasons not to do it. I will do it after lunch. I will start after this video. I will begin when I feel more focused. I have had a difficult day. Sometimes these statements are reasonable. Often they are simply delays dressed as decisions. A better approach is to create a clear starting point. At 7 o'clock, you begin. After breakfast, you walk. When you sit at your desk, you write. After brushing your teeth, you read. The fewer decisions you make in the moment, the less room there is for negotiation. This is why routines can be so useful. A routine turns a decision into a sequence. One action naturally leads to the next. You do not have to repeatedly ask what comes next. You already know. But ordinary days also require flexibility. A routine should support your life, not control it. Some days will interrupt your plans. You may have an unexpected responsibility. You may need to travel. You may become exhausted. You may simply need rest. Consistency does not mean following the exact same schedule under every condition. It means preserving the direction. If you cannot do the full habit, do the smaller version. If the morning disappears, use the afternoon. If the usual location is unavailable, find another. If the original plan fails, adjust the plan instead of abandoning the goal. This is a subtle but important difference. Rigid people often break when circumstances change. Adaptable people continue moving. Think about a person learning a musical instrument. They planned to practice for 40 minutes every evening. One day, they arrive home late. They could say, "There is no point now." Or they could practice for 5 minutes. 5 minutes will not produce dramatic improvement, but it protects the habit. It tells the brain that the behavior still belongs in their life. This is how you win ordinary days. not by making every day impressive, by refusing to let imperfect days become permanent excuses. You also need to understand that boredom is normal. When you begin something new, the early stages can be exciting. You notice improvement, you feel proud, you enjoy learning, then the novelty fades. The same workout becomes familiar, the same reading routine becomes normal, the same work session feels repetitive. This is often where people assume the habit has stopped working, but repetition is supposed to feel ordinary. If a habit becomes easier and less exciting, that can be a sign that it is becoming established. You do not need to feel inspired every time. You need to keep showing up. There is freedom in understanding this. You no longer need to chase a perfect emotional state before acting. You can be tired and still begin. You can be bored and still continue. You can have doubts and still take the next step. You can have an ordinary day and still make progress. So stop measuring your life only by your biggest achievements. Look at your average Tuesday. Look at the choices you make when nobody is watching. Look at what happens when the day does not go according to plan. That is where your system reveals its strength. A strong habit is not one that works only when life is perfect. A strong habit has a version that survives imperfect conditions. Create that version. Give yourself a minimum. Choose clear starting points. Reduce unnecessary decisions. Expect interruptions. Allow your routine to adapt. And most importantly, stop waiting for ordinary days to feel extraordinary. They do not need to. They only need to move you forward. Your future will be built on thousands of normal mornings, normal afternoons, and normal evenings. You will not remember most of them, but your habits will. Every ordinary day gives you another opportunity to practice the person you are becoming. So win the ordinary day. Do the small thing. Keep the promise. Return when you drift. Continue when the excitement is gone. Because extraordinary lives are rarely built in extraordinary moments. They are built quietly, repeatedly, on ordinary days that seemed unimportant at the time. Chapter 7. When you break the chain. One missed day can feel much bigger than it really is. You planned to exercise. You did not. You planned to read. You skipped it. You planned to work on something important. You spent the evening doing something else. Then a thought appears. I ruined my progress. That thought can be more dangerous than the missed day itself, because a missed day is an event. Giving up is a decision, and those are not the same thing. Imagine someone who has been walking every morning for 3 weeks. They have built a steady rhythm. Then one morning, heavy rain arrives. They stay home. The next morning, they wake up late. Now they have missed 2 days. By the third morning, something strange happens. They begin thinking of themselves as someone who has stopped. The original interruption was caused by rain. The longer interruption was created by a story. This is how a small break can become a complete retreat. The goal of a habit is not to create a perfect chain that can never be broken. That is impossible. Life will interrupt you. You will get sick. You will become busy. You will travel. You will lose focus. You will make poor choices. Sometimes you will simply have a bad day. A strong habit system does not depend on perfection. It depends on recovery. This is one of the most important skills you can develop. The ability to return quickly. Think about a person learning to ride a bicycle. Falling does not mean they have failed at cycling. It means they have fallen. They get up. They adjust. They try again. We often treat mistakes in our habits differently. We turn one missed day into a judgment about ourselves. I am lazy. I have no discipline. I always quit. These statements turn behavior into identity, and once the mistake becomes part of your identity, returning becomes harder. Instead, describe what actually happened. I missed yesterday. That is all. It is factual. It does not predict tomorrow. This simple change in language can protect you from unnecessary shame. You are not a failure because you missed a habit. You are a person who missed a habit. There is a difference. Now ask a better question. What caused the break? Maybe your schedule changed. Maybe the habit was too large. Maybe you were exhausted. Maybe your environment made the behavior difficult. Maybe you had not planned for an interruption. The answer is useful because every setback contains information. Suppose you planned to exercise every evening after work. For 2 weeks, it worked. Then your workload increased, and you began arriving home late. You could conclude, I am not disciplined enough. Or you could recognize the real problem. The habit depends too heavily on a time that is no longer reliable. That gives you an opportunity to redesign it. Perhaps you move the workout to the morning. Perhaps you exercise during lunch. Perhaps you create a shorter version for busy days. The setback becomes feedback. That is a much more productive way to think. There is also a difference between breaking a habit and abandoning a habit. Breaking means the pattern was interrupted. Abandoning means you decided the interruption should continue. This distinction gives you power. You cannot always control whether a difficult day appears. You can control what happens after it. One of the most useful rules is simple. Never let one missed day become 2 without a good reason. You do not need to make up for the missed day. You do not need to punish yourself. You do not need to perform twice as much tomorrow. You simply return. If you missed your workout, do the next workout. If you missed your reading, read tonight. If you stopped writing, write 1 paragraph. If you lost your routine, restart with the smallest version. The purpose of returning quickly is not to protect a perfect record. It is to protect your relationship with the behavior. You want to become someone who knows how to come back. This matters because long-term progress is not a straight line. It is more like a series of adjustments. You move forward, something changes. You slow down, you adjust, you move forward again. The people who appear consistent for years are not people who never struggle. They are people who recover without turning every struggle into a crisis. There is another trap that deserves attention. After a setback, people often try to compensate with extreme effort. They miss 3 workouts, then decide to exercise for 2 hours. They spend too much money, then create an unrealistic budget. They fall behind on work, then plan an exhausting all-night session. This feels like responsibility. Often, it is guilt wearing the mask of discipline. Extreme correction can create another cycle of exhaustion and failure. A better response is calm repair. Return to the normal plan. Make the next action small. Remove whatever caused unnecessary friction, then continue. You do not need to erase yesterday. You need to make today useful. This is also why tracking can be helpful. A simple record can show you the difference between a temporary interruption and a genuine pattern. If you miss 1 day in a month, that is very different from stopping for 3 weeks. Without a record, your emotions may exaggerate the situation. With a record, you can see reality. But do not turn tracking into another source of pressure. The purpose is awareness, not punishment. Your goal is not to create a perfect calendar. Your goal is to create a life in which returning becomes normal. Think about that for a moment. What if missing a day did not make you question who you are? What if it simply reminded you to begin again? That mindset creates resilience. You become less afraid of imperfect progress because you know how to recover, and that makes it easier to keep trying. So the next time you break a habit, resist the urge to create a dramatic story. Do not say that everything is ruined. Do not wait for Monday. Do not wait for the first day of a new month. Do not wait until you feel motivated again. Return at the next reasonable opportunity. Make the action small. Do it once, then do it again. The chain may have broken. That does not mean the journey has ended. In fact, the moment after a break may be one of the most important moments in the entire process. It is where you decide whether the old pattern gets stronger or the new one gets another chance. Remember this. Consistency is not the absence of failure. Consistency is the ability to return. You will have difficult days. You will lose momentum. You will make mistakes. That is part of being human, but you can learn to return faster. And every time you return, you strengthen a different kind of habit, the habit of beginning again. That may be one of the most valuable habits you ever build. Chapter 8. Build a system that carries you. A habit can begin with a decision. A lasting habit usually needs something more. It needs a system. Imagine someone who wants to write a book. They have a clear goal. They know the subject. They are excited about the idea. But every morning they wake up and ask the same questions. When should I write? Where should I write? How much should I write? What should I work on first? By the time they answer those questions, their attention is already being pulled somewhere else. The problem is not a lack of ambition. The problem is that the goal has no structure around it. Now imagine a different approach. The writer knows exactly what happens after breakfast. They sit at the same desk. Their phone stays outside the room. The document is already open. They write for 20 minutes before doing anything else. There is less thinking, less negotiation, less room for distraction. The system carries part of the responsibility. This is the next level of habit building. A habit is a repeated behavior. A system is the structure that makes the behavior easier to repeat. This distinction matters because motivation is not a reliable system. Some mornings you will feel motivated. Other mornings you will not. If your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will change with your mood. A system gives you something more stable. It tells you what happens next. Think about a restaurant. A busy restaurant could not operate if every employee had to invent the process from scratch each day. There are routines for opening. There are routines for preparing food. There are routines for serving customers. There are routines for closing. The system reduces unnecessary decisions. Your personal life can benefit from the same principle. You can create simple structures around the behaviors that matter most. Suppose you want to exercise consistently. A goal says, I want to become fit. A habit says, I exercise. A system says, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I exercise after work. My clothes are ready before I leave home. I know what workout I am doing before I arrive. The system removes uncertainty. That matters because uncertainty creates friction. You are more likely to delay a task when you have to decide everything at the last moment. So begin by identifying the behavior you want to make reliable. Then ask a different question. What needs to happen before this behavior becomes easy to start? That question shifts your attention from motivation to preparation. If you want to read, choose the book in advance. If you want to write, decide what you will write before sitting down. If you want to study, prepare the materials beforehand. If you want to exercise, choose the workout before the session begins. Preparation turns future decisions into present decisions. And present decisions are often easier because you are making them calmly instead of under pressure. Another useful tool is habit stacking. This means connecting a new behavior to something you already do consistently. After you make your morning coffee, you review your priorities. After you brush your teeth, you prepare your clothes for tomorrow. After lunch, you take a short walk. The existing routine becomes the anchor. You are not trying to remember a completely new behavior from nowhere. You are attaching it to something already familiar. Systems can also include checkpoints. Without a checkpoint, you may repeat a routine without noticing whether it is actually helping. Imagine someone who spends an hour every evening studying. They assume they are making progress, but they never review what they have learned. They never test themselves. They never ask whether the method is working. They are performing the habit, but the system is incomplete. A useful system should include a way to measure direction. Once a week, ask simple questions. What worked? What did not? What kept getting in the way? What became easier? What needs to change? This does not need to become a complicated productivity exercise. A few honest minutes can be enough. The purpose is adjustment. Because a system that never changes can become a cage. Your life changes, your schedule changes, your responsibilities change, your energy changes. The system must be able to adapt. This is why you should build systems around principles rather than rigid rules. The principle might be, I protect an hour for meaningful work. The exact hour can change. The principle remains. This flexibility allows your habits to survive real life. There is another important part of a strong system. It should reduce the number of decisions you have to make. Every day contains hundreds of choices. What should I eat? When should I work? When should I exercise? What should I study? Should I check my phone? What task should I start? Too many decisions create mental fatigue. You can reduce that fatigue by deciding certain things in advance. Create a regular breakfast. Choose specific days for exercise. Set a consistent time for reading. Keep your work materials organized. Prepare tomorrow's priorities before ending today. You are not removing freedom. You are protecting your attention for decisions that actually matter. A system should also make progress visible. If your goal is writing, track pages or sessions. If your goal is exercise, track completed workouts. If your goal is learning, record what you practiced. The purpose is not to become obsessed with numbers. It is to make progress easier to see. What gets noticed can be improved. What remains invisible is easy to underestimate. But remember something important. Do not build a system so complicated that maintaining the system becomes the new project. You do not need 12 apps. You do not need a perfect planner. You do not need an elaborate morning routine. You need a structure you can actually live with. A good system is often surprisingly simple. A clear time, a clear place, a clear action, a small preparation step, a way to review. That may be enough. Think again about the writer. They do not need to feel inspired every morning. They know when writing happens. They know where it happens. They know what they are working on. They have removed the phone. They have prepared the document. They have a small daily target. At the end of the week, they review their progress. The system does not write the book for them. It does something more realistic. It makes writing easier to repeat. That is what a personal system should do. It should not control every minute of your life. It should carry some of the weight. When your system is working, you spend less energy deciding whether to act and more energy actually acting. That is the real advantage. You stop asking yourself every morning whether today is the day. You already know what today requires. So choose one important habit. Build a simple system around it. Decide when it happens. Decide where it happens. Prepare what you need. Connect it to an existing routine. Track enough to stay aware. Review it regularly. Then improve it as your life changes. You are no longer depending on motivation alone. You are creating conditions that support consistency. That is a major shift, because the strongest people are not always the people with the strongest willpower. Often they are people who have built lives that make the right actions easier to repeat. A good habit asks you to act. A good system helps you remember why, when, and how. And when the system becomes strong enough, you no longer have to carry the entire burden yourself. The structure carries part of it for you. That is when habits begin to move from effort into lifestyle. You are not simply trying to stay consistent. You are building a life designed to make consistency possible. Chapter 9. The compound effect of repetition. Most important changes in life are difficult to see while they are happening. A person reads for 10 minutes today. Nothing dramatic happens. They save a small amount of money. Nothing dramatic happens. They practice a skill for 20 minutes. Nothing dramatic happens. They choose to walk instead of sitting. Nothing dramatic happens. This is why people often underestimate repetition. The results are usually too small to impress you at the beginning, but repetition has a strange quality. It does not simply add, it can compound. Think about a drop of water falling in the same place. One drop changes almost nothing. 1,000 drops still seem insignificant, but given enough time, repeated pressure can change something solid. Human behavior works in a similar way. A single action may have very little visible impact. Repeated action creates a pattern. A repeated pattern creates a skill. A repeated skill can create an advantage, and an advantage maintained for years can change the direction of a life. This is the compound effect of repetition. Consider someone learning to write. On the first day, they may struggle to produce one good page. After a month of regular practice, they begin to understand their own process. After a year, they may write with greater speed and confidence. The improvement did not arrive in one session. It accumulated quietly. Each session added experience to the next. This is why comparing your beginning with someone else's developed ability can be so misleading. You see their current result. You do not see the thousands of repetitions behind it. You see the person who speaks confidently. You do not see the years they spent practicing. You see the strong business. You do not see the ordinary decisions that built it. You see the healthy body. You do not see the countless meals, walks, workouts, and nights of rest. The visible result is often the final layer of an invisible process. That process is repetition. There is another reason repetition becomes powerful. Every time you repeat a behavior, you become slightly more familiar with it. At first, the action requires attention. Then it becomes easier. Then you become faster. Then you become more precise. Eventually, something that once required effort can feel natural. This is how practice becomes ability, and ability creates new opportunities. Imagine someone who spends 20 minutes each day learning a useful skill. At the beginning, they know very little. After a few weeks, they understand the basics. After several months, they can produce something valuable. Eventually, they may be able to use that skill professionally. The first 20-minute session did not create the opportunity, but without that first session, the opportunity could never have existed. Small actions often have delayed consequences. That delay creates one of the greatest challenges in habit building. People expect immediate proof. They exercise for a week and expect to see a dramatic physical change. They save money for a month and expect financial freedom. They read a few books and expect complete wisdom. They practice a skill for several weeks and expect mastery. When the result does not appear quickly, they assume the effort is not working. But some processes have a long, invisible stage. A seed does not look like a tree. For a long time, much of its development happens where you cannot see it. Your habits can work the same way. You may be building something before you can measure it. This does not mean every habit will automatically produce a great result. Repetition alone is not enough. You can repeat the wrong behavior for years. You can practice poor technique. You can reinforce unhealthy patterns. You can become extremely efficient at doing something that does not matter. So repetition needs direction. Ask yourself what your repeated actions are producing. If you continue your current routines for another year, where are they likely to take you? That question can be uncomfortable, but it is useful. Imagine your current life projected forward, not dramatically, just honestly. If you continue spending your evenings the same way, what will your attention look like a year from now? If you continue avoiding difficult conversations, what will your relationships look like? If you continue learning, practicing, saving, exercising, or creating, what might become possible? The future does not need to be predicted perfectly. You only need to understand the direction created by repetition. This is where small choices become powerful. You are not choosing only what happens today. You are influencing what becomes easier tomorrow. Read today, and reading becomes slightly more familiar. Practice today, and practice becomes slightly easier to begin. Save today, and saving becomes part of your behavior. Keep a promise today, and keeping promises becomes more familiar. Every repetition reduces the distance between intention and action. Over time, that distance can become surprisingly small. There is also a social dimension to compounding. Your habits can influence the people around you. A parent who reads regularly may make reading feel normal to a child. A leader who prepares carefully may influence a team to become more organized. A person who listens patiently may improve the quality of a relationship. Your repeated behavior can become part of someone else's environment. This means the effect of a habit may extend beyond your own life. You may never know how far one consistent behavior travels, but do not become obsessed with the size of the final result. That can create impatience. Instead, focus on the next repetition, the next page, the next workout, the next conversation, the next practice session, the next responsible decision. You do not need to create your entire future today. You need to make the next repetition worth keeping. This is especially important when progress feels slow. Slow progress can still be real progress. A person who improves by a small amount each week may eventually become almost unrecognizable compared with where they started. The change happens gradually enough that they barely notice it. Then one day, they look back and realize that their normal life has changed. The work became easier. The skill became stronger. The routine became natural. The person became different. That is the quiet power of compounding. It does not usually arrive with a dramatic announcement. It accumulates in the background, and because it works slowly, patience becomes part of the process. You have to be willing to continue before the evidence becomes obvious. You have to trust the process enough to repeat the action when the reward is still far away. This does not mean blindly repeating something forever. Review your results, adjust your approach, improve your methods. Then keep going. Repetition is not mindless persistence. It is deliberate practice over time. So look at your habits again. Not only the habits you want to build, look at the habits you already have. What are they compounding? What skills are they developing? What attitudes are they strengthening? What kind of future are they making easier? Your life is constantly accumulating. Knowledge accumulates. Fitness accumulates. Trust accumulates. Debt accumulates. Confidence accumulates. Distraction accumulates too. So does neglect. The question is not whether your repeated actions will have consequences. They will. The question is which consequences you are willing to create. A single decision may feel small. A repeated decision becomes a direction. A direction repeated long enough becomes a life. That is why the ordinary action deserves your attention. You may not see the result today. You may not see it next week. But every repetition is adding something to the person you are becoming and the life you are building. So keep going. Not because every day will feel meaningful. Not because every effort will produce an immediate reward. Keep going because repetition is doing work that your eyes cannot always see. The future is not built in one great moment. It is accumulated, one choice, one action, one repetition at a time. Chapter 10. Build the life you want to repeat. At some point, you have to stop asking what you want to achieve. You have to ask something deeper. What kind of life do I want to live again tomorrow? That question changes the way you think about habits. Goals are important. They give you direction. But goals describe moments in the future. Habits shape the days that lead to those moments. And your days are not waiting rooms for your real life. Your days are your life. Think about that. The ordinary morning, the commute, the hours at work, the meal you eat, the conversation you have. The evening when you decide what deserves your attention. These moments may never become memorable stories, but they make up most of your existence. If your habits create days you constantly want to escape, reaching a future goal may not solve the deeper problem. You may get the promotion and still feel exhausted. You may make more money and still have no control over your time. You may reach a physical goal and still dislike the way you live. You may finish a major project and immediately feel empty because you never learned how to enjoy the process. This is why the final purpose of habit building is not simply achievement. it is alignment. Your repeated actions should gradually move your daily life closer to what matters to you. That does not mean every day will be enjoyable. Some work will be difficult. Some responsibilities will be unavoidable. There will be stressful seasons. There will be sacrifice. But the overall direction should make sense. Your habits should support the person you want to be and the life you actually want to experience. Consider someone who says they want more freedom. They work longer hours every week. They check messages late at night. They fill every empty space with another responsibility. They may be building a successful career, but their daily habits are creating less freedom. The goal and the lifestyle are moving in opposite directions. That conflict can continue for years unless they notice it. Now imagine someone who values health. They do not need to become obsessed with fitness. They simply create a life where movement, rest, good food, and recovery have a regular place. Health becomes part of the design of the week. It is not something they try to rescue after everything else is finished. That is the difference between chasing a result and building a life. The life comes first. The result grows from it. This is where everything in the habit code comes together. You learn to notice your patterns. You learned how habits are triggered. You learn to start smaller. You learn to shape your environment. You learn to connect habits with identity. You learn to survive ordinary days. You learned how to return after setbacks. You learned to build systems. And you learned how repetition compounds. Now there is one final question. What are all those habits building? Do not answer too quickly. Think about your actual life. If you repeated your current week for the next 5 years, would you be satisfied with the direction? Not because every week would be perfect, but because the pattern would be worth continuing. That question can reveal a great deal. Maybe your answer is yes, then protect what is working. Maybe your answer is no. Then you have something important to redesign. You do not need to rebuild everything. Choose the areas that matter most: your health, your relationships, your work, your learning, your finances, your attention, your inner life. Then look for the repeated behaviors underneath each area, because outcomes are usually connected to patterns. If you want a better relationship, look at how you repeatedly communicate. If you want better health, look at how you repeatedly eat, move, and rest. If you want better work, look at how you repeatedly use your attention. If you want greater peace, look at what you repeatedly allow into your mind. The goal is not to control every detail. It is to influence the patterns that matter. There is also a danger in becoming too focused on improvement. Personal growth can become another form of dissatisfaction. You can spend so much time trying to become better that you forget to live. You can turn every morning into a productivity challenge, every meal into a health calculation, every evening into a performance review. That is not the purpose of habits. Habits should create space for life, not consume it. A good system should make important things easier so you can be present for them. Read so you can understand more. Exercise so you can live with greater energy. Save money so you can have more choices. Protect your attention so you can give it to people and work that matter. Build routines so you do not have to think about every small decision. The point is not to become a machine. The point is to become more available for what matters. This also means choosing what not to repeat. Every habit takes something from your limited time and attention. If you repeatedly say yes to things that do not matter, you leave less room for things that do. Sometimes changing your life requires adding a habit. Sometimes it requires removing one. A habit of constant availability may need to be replaced with a habit of boundaries. A habit of endless consumption may need to be replaced with creation. A habit of avoiding discomfort may need to be replaced with honest action. Your future is shaped not only by what you practice, it is shaped by what you stop practicing. So think beyond the next 30 days. Imagine yourself several years from now. Do not picture only the achievements. Picture an ordinary Tuesday. Where do you wake up? How do you spend the first hour? What kind of work fills your day? How do you treat the people you love? What does your body feel like? What occupies your attention? What do you do when the day becomes difficult? What kind of person moves through that life? Now work backward. What habits would make that ordinary Tuesday possible? That is where your real plan begins, not with a perfect vision, with repeated actions that support the vision. Choose habits that you can live with. Choose systems that can survive difficult seasons. Choose standards that challenge you without destroying your balance. Choose routines that leave room for people, rest, curiosity, and unexpected moments. And remember that your habits will change as your life changes. The person you are becoming today may need different routines 5 years from now. That is not failure, that is growth. A habit should serve your life. Your life should not become a servant to your habits. So keep reviewing, keep adjusting, keep asking whether your repeated actions still match what matters to you. There is no final version of your life. There is only the life you are practicing today, and tomorrow you get another chance to practice it differently. Perhaps that is the most hopeful part of this entire journey. You do not need to change everything at once. You do not need to become someone else. You only need to choose the next repetition, the next meal, the next conversation, the next hour of focused work, the next decision, the next small promise. Then repeat the choices that deserve to become part of your life. Eventually, those choices will become your normal days, and your normal days will become your life. So do not build a life that looks impressive from a distance, but feels exhausting from the inside. Build a life you can respect when nobody is watching. Build habits that protect what matters. Build systems that support your values. Build routines that give your days direction without taking away their meaning. Build an identity that grows through action. And build a future that does not require you to constantly escape the present. Because the ultimate goal of habit change is not to create a perfect life. It is to create a life you are willing to repeat. A life where the ordinary days have meaning. A life where your actions match your values. A life where your future is being built by choices you can stand behind. Your habits are writing that life now, one ordinary day at a time. So choose what you repeat, choose what you strengthen, choose what you carry forward. Then live it, repeat it, and let the life you want become the life you practice every day.